Dear audience, we are going to proceed to our plenary session, which is going to be led by Dr. Shyam Sharma, as you would have guessed by now. Dr. Sharma is an associate professor and graduate program director in the program in writing and rhetoric at the State University of New York in Stony Brook. His scholarship and teaching focus on writing in the disciplines, professional communication, cross-cultural rhetoric, international students and education, and issues about language and language policy. He's also a recipient of prestigious honors such as Cross Scholars Award and the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Faculty Service. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shyam Sharma to begin the plenary session titled Cultivating Ecologies of Language and Knowledge, Transcending Boundaries and Countering Hegemonies. I request Dr. Sharma to commence the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mehak and Mehak. And thank you, Arifa. Thank you, Samsat. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. Let me see if I can share my screen a little bit here, and then I will get started. Okay. Yes, it is past midnight, but I'm always passionate, intrigued by the conversation and the opportunity to connect with you. I will start by noting that I just returned from Germany, and I'm still feeling the real impact of a jet lag. So I'm now going to try a few sentences that I can try to construct in Bangla. Ami Bangla alpo buji kintu bhalo bolte pari na. Even my English is falling apart, so bear with me. However, on the good side, I'm going to save a lot of time for discussion by keeping my presentation short. I have, as I grow older, I have increasingly started believing that delivery is only a very small means towards a much broader, greater end, which is community exchange and engagement. And therefore, I will speak roughly 20 minutes, saving plenty of time. Get ready to engage, everybody. Let me start with a quick summary of what this title means. The structure and culture of today's formal education, especially what we call the knowledge ecology, within academia, reproduces relationship of colonization, as Dr. Hussain was already highlighting, and rewards, incentives, recognition, all subvert the local agency by reproducing global forces, creating a variety of barriers against the normal flow of knowledge within and beyond the academic sphere. In other words, if we leave knowledge to flow as it is, it would be far better than getting the academics involved. Sounds radical, unfortunately, tragically true. Instead of being active agents of change and disruption of colonial hierarchical structures of privilege, education systems are designed to suppress the local ecologies of language and knowledge flow. This plenary, this session, tries to identify some of the geopolitical structures and policy and practice that serve as barriers within academia against local knowledge ecologies, against local knowledge and local epistemic flow. And then I'll try to share some strategies for transcending them through strategies like translingualism, transcultural, transdisciplinary, and cross-cultural epistemic work, addressing the conundrum posed by the potential reproduction of local hegemonies when trying to counter global forces. I'd like to highlight and share some practical strategies, including by sharing my own work, so that I can show what I do rather than preach what I don't practice. These are the four sub-arguments. One, that current education system reproduce colonial structures by suppressing local knowledge ecologies. Two, that local scholars are ethically responsible for not doing so and responsible for fostering local knowledge flows by countering global local hegemonies and structures. Three, that universities are also socially responsible to reward scholars for making local social impact first and then contributing to global knowledge ecologies second, especially in the global south, because they don't have the resource to contribute globally first. And they have a moral responsibility to do the other way around. And four, that scholars, we can push institutions with multilingual, locally grounded, and public scholarship. I'm going to use this later on, but I would like you to think about this before you start listening to me. If I were to ask you to make a list of languages, genres, mediums, venues, stakeholders, and strategies with which you can make local knowledge that you produce or you envision producing more accessible to the public and more impactful to the local society first, what would those languages, genres, mediums, venues, stakeholders, and strategies be? If you could take a minute and take a pen and paper and write down what they would be. Now, in order to do this, you have to become, in the short run, selfless and not think about what is rewarded. Of course, writing in Bangla is not rewarded. The universities are somehow doing the bizarre work of discouraging, demoralizing, and destroying local knowledge ecology by not rewarding anything published in local languages in which life, community, professions run. Think about genres. Many colleagues here publish op-eds, even though I don't think they get academic reward for that. They do it out of the goodness of their heart, out of the love of their community and profession. Think about mediums. You could have a YouTube channel with thousands of people watching you and understanding what it means to do something, whether that is cooking, chemistry, business, policy, writing, research. Forget that you are not given reward for a YouTube channel, but how could you make an impact as a hobby on the side? Or because you don't care, you already are a full professor and whatnot. Think about venues in which you could be publishing, sharing, exchanging, connecting, collaborating, commenting dynamically with your community. Think about the number of stakeholders, teachers, students, administrators, community members, family, policymakers. What are those people who would benefit from your knowledge towards making an impact in the society? And strategies. Do you present? Do you talk? Do you write? Do you visualize? Do you advocate? Do you fight? Do you go protesting? What is it? What are the strategies that you would use in order to make knowledge free? So if you were to give knowledge the freedom from the bondage of the social, economic, the academic structures of the university, how would your knowledge become free and capable of doing the work that it does with the farmers, with the engineers, with the people who do the work in the local community profession and trade and society and business and everything. All right, keep that in mind. I will ask you to return to that activity at the end. So if you think about how current education systems reproduce colonial structures by suppressing local knowledge, you would see that it is not because schools and universities, governments, and the public are powerless. They're not. It is because institutions and market forces, public policies, and social incentives are all aligned against the interest of the majority. The minority must take advantage of it. I am one of them. You are one of them. Let us start by not denying the facts. If we promote local knowledge, the farmer and the rickshaw puller, the industry worker and the villager who does the difficult work will share the privilege that the upper middle class and the ruling class currently have. It is time for scholars to look in the mirror, look at the hard data, and stop pretending, stop denying, so that we might begin to do something. 3 years ago at this same venue, I believe, at least with the same audience, I shared a map of global knowledge production, showing that there are two massive problems with this map. As discussed by one of my colleagues in South Africa, Sir Laura Cernovich, the first problem with this map is that it is made of journal articles published around the world. And these journal articles are published in certain English language, European American indexed academic databases. The first problem is that you're defining knowledge by using that bizarre artificial measurement. And the second is that even when knowledge is produced in the global south, that is refusing that knowledge, it doesn't go into the local publication venues. So there are thousands and thousands of journals in dozens of countries that produce quote unquote knowledge in that form, but they're not recognized in these current global models. Not to mention that knowledge should not only be measured in journal articles. That is bizarre. I'll get to that in a moment. So Now, 3 years later, I'm presenting a new map. This is the map of AI's production, data set entry and data set use in particular countries. You'll see there are about 6 or 7 countries where the new knowledge systems, artificial intelligence, is being advanced. Okay, let us look at this second map a little deeply. 1% of AI's training data is from or about the continent of Africa, the continent with 18% of world population, 20% of global landmass, and 54 countries, the cradle of human civilization with hundreds of languages and thousands of epistemic traditions, cultures, knowledge systems, professions, faiths. Then AI systems have access to just a few academic databases. Now, the map that you saw earlier was an ideal map. You would wish to go back to the future if you understand what is happening now. Because this map does not contain the same kind of quality data. The AI systems have access to only a few reliable academic databases. The rest is internet junk. The fact that they can filter out a little bit and the fact that they can produce plausible patterns to impress most of the world doesn't mean anything. They do not have access to quality academic or scholarly data. They scrape the information from the web, including some sketchy and even disturbing sources as documented by the likes of the Bloomberg's and Washington Post. I can share the resource later if you're interested. Now, let's look at what AI do not know. And that is the direction in which we're moving if we're still following the geopolitical powerhouses rather than the reality of local knowledge ecologies from on the ground. One, they don't have access to most of the databases, which are behind the paywalls, and they're not likely to gain access to the academic databases because the finances do not align. If AI companies can use quote unquote knowledge sources freely by scraping anything that they can find on the internet, there's no reason for them to pay billions of dollars to the already very rich and powerful academic companies, the database companies. They have no access to most books produced over centuries. Yes, they have some access to some books by some companies, but very small portion of the global body of book-based knowledge. They have no access to government and industry records, no access to trade records. They exclude information found on the web in most languages, even though they now translate barely. The knowledge from the ground up is extremely limited. There's no money for them to clean up that data, and there's no money for them to access and mobilize that data. And they have no access to most of human knowledge, which is embodied in diverse languages, cultures, practices, communities, traditions, skills, crafts, orality, and performance. Human knowledge is embodied in what we do, how we understand, what we believe, how we practice, how we relate, how we communicate, how we connect, how we collaborate. Then, if you look at what is happening, if you try to combine the two maps, then you will see something very disturbing. If you're already disturbed by the first map and the second map, look at the colonial legacies that shaped global education structures. Local knowledge systems are marginalized by universities. Globalized and Western neoliberal academia limits epistemic diversity. Institutional structures reinforce knowledge hierarchies. Funding and publication biases marginal and local knowledge. Bias and marginalized local knowledge. Indigenous knowledge systems face systemic exclusion, if not destruction. Language policies restrict multilingual engagement. And add the forces of AI to all of these and see what happens. We're going to find ourselves in extremely shallow and dirty waters, especially for the global south, where we are powerless against what is yet to come. Now, given those two conditions, it is obvious that scholars are ethically responsible to foster local knowledge flow by countering global local forces. And why this is we are so ethically responsible to do this is a focus of my discussion today. We have to be grounded in our professional accountability to our students and their parents, to the taxpayers who pay our salaries, and to the future generation that may include our own children as well as children of our neighbors. That is the ethical responsibility that we have. We know the fundamental realities like this. One, that knowledge is mostly embodied in community, as I said, that it flows in diverse genres, mediums, and platforms. 3, governments and politics, policies and legislation, business and trade, community and institutions, mostly run or entirely run in local languages in most parts of the world. But the fact is that privilege and power, class in particular, class structure, best explain the current language politics and the fractured knowledge flow controlled by the cartels of universities. However, here is the good news side of that same coin. That the fact is that there are many, many, many benefits of pursuing, embracing, advocating, and fighting for local knowledge ecology. What we need is a little bit of farsightedness, a little bit of intellectual courage, a little bit of ethical responsibility. What would happen if more scholars started publishing on local issues in local languages, engaging and trying to address local challenges and opportunities? Far more faculty seem to publish, and this is what I've seen when I travel the world. I'll give you an example later. When they can do this, far more kinds of work will be recognized. Not only one type, journal articles, but various types will be recognized when knowledge flows better in different genres and languages. Local and global knowledge will be more accessible to society, no doubt, obviously. And the most significant is that there will be far greater sense of purpose and greater motivation among scholars across the board. These are the benefits. We know it. It just is a matter of the more established scholars and some of the institutions taking the first moral, intellectual, ethical courage to do the right thing. So let's see how that can be done. Universities must feel and can feel socially responsible to reward scholars for making local social impact first, and then global knowledge contributions second in that order. And this social responsibility will not just happen without broader social challenges, without disruption to the economic model, without diverse stakeholders putting pressure on institutions that are currently moving in all kinds of wrong directions. So this is not to say that we can just tell the university what to do. I think we need to do the work, the hard work from the ground up to push them in that direction. And I'll get to that in a moment. So the foundational strategies could be to build a discourse and awareness about fostering local ecologies. We can start at least a conversation on a regular basis among the willing, among the interested, and gradually take that conversation as we flesh it out to academic institutional leaders. Support writers and gatekeepers, such as authors, editors, and reviewers, to improve the quality of local publications so that only the language matter will be a barrier, quality will not be. Redesign graduate and undergraduate education so that students begin to see the value of local knowledge flow. They will begin to research local issues. They will begin to write and publish and share knowledge locally, breaking barriers between academia and the outside world. We need to help institutions to change policies and incentives. On a personal note, I'm currently working with my own institution here in America, where you would think only English applies, to recognize different languages, to recognize different genres, to recognize public scholarship. It can be done, at least at the level of pushing, showing, and I'll show you an example from my own personal career in a moment. And we need to develop local metrics. I'm so happy to I have heard a few days ago, Samsad and other colleagues beginning to work on local metrics that will reward local and global exchange as well, but will recognize the local knowledge production and flow in the first place. So these are some ways we could be countering the hegemony of the local global barriers that we have created deliberately, and we need to break it, tear it down. One is to foster greater inclusion with translingual scholarship. These are something that you already know. I'm not going to spend time on this. I'll save time for discussion. Broaden the cultural perspectives with the transcultural approaches, integrate diverse knowledge systems with transdisciplinary studies, avoid local hierarchies and reproduction of the colonial structures. That's very important. Encourage community-engaged scholarship, support open access publishing for broader impact, update curriculum based on grounded knowledge, and make assessment inclusive so that our students are rewarded for doing the kind of work that we want them to do. And finally, and this is my last segment, I do want to save time for discussion. Scholars can and should push institutions with multilingual, locally grounded, and public scholarship. Meaning that we are not powerless, little pegs in the system, if we dare to practice what we preach, well, at least where we can. If we are if we are not selfish, if we're a little selfless, if we can show the result of our principles not just tell people what to do, but show them what we have done, and help our institutions with a better policy and leadership, institutions would also be more willing to listen to us if we do our due diligence and not simply become slavish to whatever is the greedy, easy, immediate, competitive opportunity. If we're less opportunistic, if we're a little more idealistic, if we're a little willing to make a little sacrifice, we can push that. And I'll give you this example here. I visited Costa Rica as part of the Fulbright Specialist Program over summer this year. I went there hoping to help more scholars there to write in international journals in English. To my utter pleasant surprise, I found out that most of the scholars there don't give a damn because they don't have to publish in English in international journals. As long as they publish quality articles, quality books, quality research in their local journals, local venues, local network of practice and knowledge systems, they are rewarded for it. And therefore, I had to start learning Spanish as fast as I could. I had to get colleagues to translate my English into Spanish and include more of the people who did not write in English. And I was extremely happy, even though it was challenging, that I was able to see this ecology that was far richer than Bangladesh or India or Nepal. And so compared to the global South in South Asia, the global South in Central and South America is far more respectable. If you can, please visit and learn and be motivated and inspired by those communities, some of which are not doing as well as Costa Rica, but they have dignity, but they have self-respect enough to say, if I am a specialist in potato, my brother who cultivates potato, the farmer needs to understand how to treat that disease. They have the self-respect and dignity to understand that their own roads must be studied by their own scholars, because no British scholars or Japanese scholars are going to go there and study how to make better roads and bridges. They have the dignity enough to improve their education by writing and reading, talking, and practicing education in their own language, and building English on top of intellectually savvy, emotionally well-developed, socially well-rounded students in their schools. I found their students are very weak in the lower level, but by high school, I found them, they're able to speak English fluently. And in college, they were fine. I have seen this in Japan. I've seen this in Western Europe. I have heard about this in Japan. I've seen it in many other places. And to scholars in South Asia, wake up. Help, have some self-respect, start pushing the systems by practicing first. I'm going to cut it short. Here are some practical strategies. I'm not going to go on and on. Here are some genres. These are obvious, but let me wrap up by sharing my own example. I don't just preach, I practice. And when I went up for full professor this year, after 6 years of being an associate professor, I made the case based on all the languages I have used, all the genres I have published in, all the venues, all the stakeholders, all the programs, all the services that I have advanced. I did publish adequately in the traditional journal articles and books, but I said, that is not what I'm proud of. I did it for the system. I am proud of this. If you're interested, I would share the case that I made for my promotion. Luckily, the file has moved on. I'm not worried about it. It has gone past the critical steps. Here, just an example, publications, not just books, monographs and edited books, but journal articles and chapters and reviews and significant non-peer-reviewed publication. That is a far longer list than the formal publications. Within it, correspondence, op-eds, editorials, essays, program reports, blog posts, and within educational resources, also non-formal publications. There are a variety of them, many, many reports, many, many types of academic resources. And even within professional presentations, I have tried to diversify them. I've never said this is a small venue, I won't go there. I don't look for hierarchical opportunities to keep reaching upward. I go sideways, I go downward, I go to the smallest venue I can to inspire the people that I could inspire. I work with high schools across the country in Nepal. I have worked with universities, colleges of all kinds. I've gone and given talks wherever I'm paid to travel, not paid to travel, but life is short and the right thing must be done. My list of academic service, which intersects nicely with my teaching and research also, is long and diverse in terms of how I exercise my knowledge. I don't just publish because that is intellectual luxury. Every time I publish an article, I give a few talks. I try to change my own curriculum. I try to train a bunch of faculty members. I try to push the university in that same direction with policy level work. I worked at the It's co-chair of the accreditation board. I worked as the chair of the curriculum committee. I am working now as the vice president for University Senate. I have worked in a whole host of state level, national, international, local, departmental, college level work. And everywhere, whatever I do in my scholarship is applied in service, leadership, and teaching. This is the ecology that we need to embody in person in our own work. You will be rewarded if you dare to change the system slowly. It may take 10 years or 20 years, or maybe the next generation of scholars will do it, but you have to make the effort. You have to take the first step. Dhanyavad.